November 2022 by Parliament, 2nd November. And yes, I've read to you the standing order and members of the press, even where the legislation has been passed and has to be implemented, and this is the committee that ensures it is implemented. And we have just asked our clerk to write to even State House Controller, because there's a controversy over what the retired president is supposed to get. It seems they have not operationalized the law, the legislation, the act on retirement presidents that was passed by Parliament. We have asked him now to summon the State House Controller to this committee. Now today before us, it is you that this Parliament passed a motion and the motion was that aware that school meals are an important safety net for vulnerable children from food insecure households and communities in Kenya, appreciating that school meals have multiple benefits such as increased school enrollments and attendance, as well as a significant and positive contribution to reducing hunger and improving nutritional intake. Noting that primary school completion rates have been found to be higher in schools with the meals provided. Thus, school meals remain a core development intervention to support the country's achievements in the education sector. Recognizing that some county governments have adopted direct and community-led initiatives for ECD school feeding programs, concerned that the exercise is not supported by a clear policy and budgetary framework and does not support pupils in primary and secondary schools who form the basic education, basic education ecosystem. Cognizant of the fact that where school meal programs have been initiated, it has been noted that they encounter different challenges that impede their effectiveness, including insufficient resources due to low budget allocation and budget cuts, lack of a school feeding policy, inadequate safe cooking and drinking water, drought and famine, poor food storage, a lengthy procurement process, insecurity, dilapidated infrastructure, among others. Now, this House therefore resolved that the Ministry of Education, through the relevant state department, immediately develops a school feeding policy to cover basic education pupils and sustain the program in order to ensure that children are maintained in schools for effective learning and to improve their well-being. That was the motion. Mr. P.S. The motion was passed in 2nd November 2022. That's when the motion was approved by the House. And Parliament does not pass legislation or a motion in vain. It has to be implemented. Therefore, we now ask you to tell us how far you have implemented the feeding program in our schools. So, briefly outline the steps made in implementing the House resolutions on the development of a school feeding policy.
Okay, Chair. Honorable Chair and members, I'm sitting in here today on behalf of our Cabinet Secretary, who could not be able to attend because of other exigencies, including that today there is a Cabinet meeting. So we are here to respond to what the committee requested us to do today through your letter dated 24th of May. And Chair, I would want to request to respond as follows. That we know this committee is considering a motion that was sponsored by the Member of Parliament for Kakamega County, Honorable Elsie Mwanda, that the Ministry of Education develops a school feeding policy to cover the basic education for pupils and sustain the program in order to ensure the children are maintained in school for effective learning and improve their well-being. The motion was approved by this House, as already you've mentioned, on 2nd November 2022, and the committee therefore requires the Ministry to appraise it on the implementation status of the same. So, Chair, the background to the school feeding program is that the school meals program in Kenya started in 1979 after the country was hit by a severe drought that affected 80% of the population and resulted in school dropouts. The program was undertaken by the government of Kenya in partnership with the World Food Program and started with 240,000 students. By the 1990s, the number of children in the school meals program had steadily expanded, and the government committing to meeting 50% of the cost of land transport, storage, and handling of food commodities. Following the introduction of free and compulsory primary education in 2003, the number of learners joining schools tremendously expanded, and in 2018, the program was fully taken over by government from the World Food Program, because at that time, the country attained a status that would not allow the World Food Program to continue funding it. So the program, Chair, has expanded gradually after the transition to cover a total of 2.6 million children in 8,185 schools across the country as of this year. This covers 26 arid and semi-arid counties and informal settlements. In 11 of these counties, that is Mandera, Tana River, Garissa, Wajir, Marsabit, Isiolo, Samburu, Baringo, West Pokot, Lamu, and Turkana, the National Council for Nomadic Education, which is the implementing agency at the Ministry of Education, provides in-kind support by providing food to schools. In the other 15 counties, the National Council for Nomadic Education provides cash transfer to schools which has been identified to require this support. These counties are Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Embu, Nyeri, mainly in the tri-part of the county, Kajiado, Narok, Kilifi, Kwale, Machakos, Kitui, Makueni, Tharaka Nithi, Laikipia, the informal settlements of Nairobi and Taita Taveta. The programs also cover all special needs education schools and refugee camp-based schools in Kenya. Over time, the school meals program has demonstrated a significant impact on school attendance, retention, transition, and completion rates in arid and semi-arid lands, pockets of poverty areas, and urban informal settlements in the country. Ensuring that the kids are well fed, healthy, and able to learn is essential for effectiveness of our education system. Therefore, realizing the critical role of school feeding program as a safety net and protective measure for ensuring vulnerable children can have a seamless access to basic education, the government of Kenya increased the national budget for this particular program from 1.96 billion shillings in the financial year 2022-2023 to 5.4 billion shillings in the financial year 23-24. However, in the financial year 2024, the budget has been reduced, though there is still engagement on this, to 3 billion shillings. We are having quite some good and fruitful engagement in Treasury on sorting out the challenges that arose at the budget-making process. As a member of the Global School Meals Coalition, Kenya has committed to achieve a universal school feeding program by 2030 by increasing the current coverage from 2.6 million children to all our children in our primary schools of up to 10 million children. That is in our comprehensive school, both in the junior school and in our primary schools. The ministry implements the school meals program through the National Council for Nomadic Education in Kenya, which is established under the Basic Education Act of 2013. Honorable Chair, to go to the substance of why we are here, is that regarding the status of policy development, the ministry has already done a draft policy document which is in place. The draft is entitled the Kenya School Meals Policy. The draft has been developed through collaboration approach involving the Ministry of Education, the United Nations World Food Programme, the National Council for Nomadic Education, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ministries of Health, Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Water and Sanitation and Irrigation. And Chair, we have already submitted a copy of the draft policy. And what I wanted to make as I go down, Chair, is that it may look like we've delayed between the time that the motion was passed and now, but I would want to also mention that we had a presidential working party on education reform. And the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform has made quite a number of recommendations. Some are legislative and others are policy. We are already submitting to this August House a sessional paper, which is the angering policy. And that's why this other policy on school meals, we may not be passing it so fast because we would want to make sure that it will be aligned to the sessional paper that is already coming to this August House. So, Chair, the overall call of this policy is to provide a framework for implementation and management of the school meals program in Kenya. The policy provides for establishment of the program based on clear policies, strategic objectives, and principles. The policy provides for key thematic areas, and these include access, equity, and inclusion, which is the most critical part, because in this country, we are providing free and compulsory quality education as provided for by Article 5.3 of our Constitution, and therefore we must ensure that inclusion and equity is addressed. And that is why school meals is for that purpose of equity and inclusion, through which the government commits to provide diversified and healthy school meals to all learners, including those with special educational needs. The second thematic area is food safety and quality, under which the government commits to ensure enhanced food safety and quality, under which the government commits to ensure enhanced food safety and quality in schools meals program. The third thematic area is nutrition and health. Under this particular area, government commits to provide safe, diverse, nutritious meals as part of a comprehensive package, school health and nutrition services. Because it is not about filling the stomach, it's about ensuring that as part of the mental development of the child, that whatever meal that we provide to the child has all nutritious parts that it is required of. The fourth thematic area is on sourcing of food and food commodities. Under this, the policy commitment is to promote provision of accessible and affordable locally available food commodities. And on this particular area, Chair, we have the homegrown policy on the direction that we would want to ensure that the school feeding program supports local communities in ensuring that they provide the necessary markets for the food commodities that are produced in these particular areas. And that is why in this particular program we have both the cash transfer and the food in kind. And the food in kind mainly targets areas which cannot be able to provide food commodities that can be acquired. And on the cash transfer, these are mainly to areas that have potential to produce some of the food that is required by our schools. So the other thematic areas is on partnership, collaboration, and linkages. And the government commits to promote a coordinated approach through which partnership, collaboration, and linkages are promoted. Chair, the draft policy document also provides for its implementation. It has a provision on resource mobilization. And Chair, the policy eventually, when we are through with it, there is a huge part on the resource mobilization. And the CEO will be able to capture a small aspect on what we are doing on resource mobilization and aligning our school feeding program to the climate action areas so that we can be able to tap into the climate action financing. So the CEO at some point will be able to say on that particular area. So to ensure sustainability of the program and for monitoring and evaluation and research, the draft document also outlines the institutional arrangement for implementation of the policy. And this has also been captured by the Basic Education Bill that is coming to this House, that is a product of the Presidential Working Party report. And therefore, this will be properly anchored within law so that we can be able to ensure sustainability and that this program is there to take care of our vulnerable children. The policy will be implemented through the existing Ministry of Education structures at the national and county level. Chair, in line with the requirement of the Constitution, the draft policy will be subjected to stakeholders' validation and public participation prior to its publication and adoption. The stakeholders' validation, our initial stakeholders' validation and public participation is projected to be done in the month of July. Chair, upon the stakeholders' validation and views and comments obtained through the process, we shall be able to incorporate the same into the policy. The revised and finalized policy document will be presented to the Cabinet for approval, after which it will formally be published and adopted. The Ministry targets to have the policy by end of year, by September, which again, we shall ensure that it is aligned to the sessional paper that is a product of the Presidential Working Party. We trust that this response adequately addresses the matters at hand and will remain available to provide any further information that this committee may require. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, PS, for that elaborate response. Members, Honorable Elise, as a friend of this committee, she was also the mover of this motion. She may want, she has something to say.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this most elaborate presentation. My concern here is that this food issue started in 1979. Now this is 45 years down the line, and here in Kenya we have not solved the school feeding program. And what you have said is good, but there is no time frame. I'm not leaving here satisfied and convinced that this feeding program will start at a certain time. Because if we are going to wait for the policy, if we are going to wait for all those bureaucracies, and as we wait, our students are suffering. Our students are getting stunted. You know, when students don't eat well, their growth is affected. So what are short-term measures you can do so that all our children get food? Because as I see here, you have only taken counties from the ASAL, but if you look at the poverty index, even other counties in Kenya are faced with a problem for food. It's not only the ASAL, if you base on the poverty index. Thank you.
Well, yes, you know, when I read to you what this implementation committee is all about, is that the committee shall scrutinize the resolution of the House, including adopted committee reports, petitions, and the undertakings by the National Executive, and examine whether or not such decisions and undertakings have been implemented, and where implemented, the extent to which they have been implemented, and whether such implementation has taken place within the minimum time necessary. That is what the honorable member is asking, the timing. And she has gone further, that many other constituencies, that the problem is now not only in ASAL areas and semi-arid. Even some areas have become ASAL and semi-arid, but they have not been included up to date. And her motion was that you include all basic education going students. That was her motion. And remember, in our 2010 constitution, food to children is a right. So your implementation is not giving us when, and yet pupils and students are dropping out of schools because of these issues. Teach.
Thank you, PS, for the presentation. PS, you've talked of the budget cuts, and you say that the budget has been reduced from 5.4 billion to 3 billion. Now, in very specific terms, you can tell us the effect of how will it affect the school feeding program in specific terms. That is the budget cut. Number two, due to the budget cuts, are we going to see food rationalization in our schools? The other issue is, PS, you know that a policy is just a statement of intention. I'm happy that you've talked about a pending bill, there is a bill that you want to bring to Parliament in respect to according to the Presidential Working Party. Now, you've told us that NACONEC is the implementing agency of the school feeding program. Now, are there plans under that bill to make NACONEC a semi-autonomous body? Meaning that NACONEC be made a legal entity, so that we have that in that bill, so that we are very sure as a country that when implementing this school feeding program, the same is fully under NACONEC, and it is made a semi-autonomous body under the proposed amendment of the Basic Education Act. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to ask a question on, I realize that schools in Kajiado County, which I represent, Kajiado's constituency, there seems to be in that program of cash transfer. But if speaking with several schools in my constituency, they seem like they have not been receiving this money. In fact, I remember recently when we did some food distribution, just regular relief food distribution, meant for populations, adult populations for relief food, we had to actually allocate some food to schools in places like Kitengela Town, Isinya Town, and some other wards in my constituency, simply because there is no food feeding program. So I'm wondering if that actually, that you say that they are receiving, whether they're actually receiving or not, whether they have been delayed in issuing the money to those schools, because it seems like at least in some of these so-called arid and semi-arid, mine is semi-arid in Kajiado County, they have not been receiving this money. And school feeding programs are not happening as far as I'm concerned. So I'm wondering whether this actually been implemented at all, or it has not actually been implemented at all. And also, I'm just wondering why can't we make it mandatory for school feeding programs across the country? Why can't we put a certain percentage, allocate a certain percentage of our national budget to our school feeding program, considering the critical need for our children to be able to attend school? And we know that there is big parts of the country, in semi-arid and arid lands particularly, and of course you have also had my colleagues from even places that have more rain than where we are. It seems like a dire need for our children to have school feeding. Why can't we locate a certain percentage and make it mandatory from our national budget so that we can feed our children?
Yes, Machogu.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak. Thank you, PS, for the response. And I want to speak like somebody who has had the benefit of the Nyayo milk. I'm a beneficiary of the school feeding program those days, and I remember I could run to school very well. Now, I looked at this particular document in your response. You're now working up on a draft policy document that you want to bring to the House. This program has been in place since 1979. Will I be right to conclude that you have been running this program, budgetary allocation is met with, without any policy and legal underpinning to it? Because when you're now working on a policy program, policy document to bring. Two, will I also be right when I look at the counties that are getting it? You have been targeting basically arid and semi-arid lands. And I'm looking at the better part of Western Kenya. There are many vulnerable children, vulnerable informal settlements. Members of Parliament, in fact, have been forced to initiate their own individual programs to, support the school feeding program, while the Constitution gives the right to each and every child. Will it not be a proper thing to do that we need to have a mandatory school feeding for each and every child going to a school, in wherever part of this particular country? Then three, you have given a dichotomy of food transfers and cash transfers. What informs which place you should be able to send food, which place you should be able to do cash transfers? And how is this cash that is sent to these particular schools monitored and effective to see that it actually does the purpose for which it's supposed to be meant for? Then finally, out of 10 million, we are only having 8,000, 2 million. 2 million. 2.6 million. 2.6 million out of 10 million. Have we not been discriminating against some Kenyan children against the Constitution of Kenya 2010? And what is the ministry doing to ensure that this discrimination is curbed timeously?
I think we can leave PS to answer that. Let me take another round. Chair, here. Just let him introduce himself.
Chair, thank you. I don't know if I can introduce myself and ask a question.
No, we'll take the other round.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Musi Kanchori. I think I get the sample. Thank you.
Yes, PS. Oh,
Chair, I'm here. I'm Rael Kasiwai, MP from West Pokot.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is just a rider, but I would like to know the strategies that the ministry has put in place to make sure that all arid, the terminology that you are using as arid and asar, that are in place to include other areas that are highly affected, even much more than some of the areas that you have put in place. For example, I would like to know whether the PS knows 3/4 of Isiolo town are in Meru County. the Isiolo Airport itself, called Isiolo Airport, is in Meru County. And there's one of the primary schools was moved out of Isiolo Airport, called Kengesia. The contractor had to move that school. And that school is not benefiting, which is in a very dry area. So the entire, maybe for example, I come from the north and I'm complete. What I want to know is the strategies and whether there is a document comprising of other areas that needs to be roped in that policy so that they can also be benefiting. Because the pockets of poverty that you are talking about are almost in all counties. If you go to Kiambu, I hear of an area called there. Or in other, if you go to other areas to find, for example, you get the north where I come from, 3/4 of it is Ahafara. So I think there's need to reorganize this and also to look at other areas that requires. The other question is about the budgetary allocation. I sit in the department, not departmental committee on education, and I know this one has been an issue. Now, what strategies are in place to make sure all of the modalities, because the budget allocation of 3 billion, there is that reduction of around 2 billion. How is the NACONI going to cope up with that huge discrepancy? Is it workable? Are they going to reduce the number of learners, or what will happen for them to navigate with this kind of budget?
Yes, PS, you can respond to that, and then we go another round.
Thank you, Chair. I will respond to some, and then I'll request the CEO to pick a few. On the school feeding, as at now, so already you've mentioned we are feeding 2.6 million children. And as at now, it is a targeted program. Targeted in the sense that we are trying to live within the means that we have. Because the budget that we have can only take up to a certain level. And targeting is not discrimination. It is only that we are saying, given this resource, then those who require it most should be taken care of. So I don't think it is discrimination. But Chair, I would want to mention that we are working with the World Food Program. We are again relooking at the areas that require support. Because for sure, over time, there has been changes, and I've talked about the climate issues, and there are more areas that require support, including new informal settlements. So starting last year, this financial year, working with the World Food Program and the Rockefeller Foundation, we are working on reviewing and retargeting the areas that require support, so that it is not really about a whole region itself. Just like the way the Equalization Fund is working today, is that there could be a specific ward in a place that may require support when the whole county may not necessarily require support. So we are refining the targeting tool so that it is more focused on specific places that may require this particular support. On the time frame, we have already said that this policy will be concluded by September, but on the wider implementation, the Global School Meals Coalition, which Kenya is a signatory to, is expecting that by 2030, we should be running universal feeding program, where all the children will be part of that particular benefiting in that. On the budget reduction, we've had quite a lot of engagement with Treasury. Originally, out of the reforms that were going on in institutions and corporations, this was inadvertently included. But we've been engaging with Treasury. So far, 3 billion shillings has been allocated, and we would want to give assurance that we shall not disadvantage children because of this reduction. And that's why we are engaging with Treasury, so that the available resources will continue to feed children in the way that they were fed, while we are waiting to re-engage ourselves in the next immediate supplementary budget, so that the same is stabilized. But you cannot deny a child who has already been benefiting. You cannot withdraw a benefit that has always been enjoyed. And in this particular circumstance, we do not intend to withdraw a benefit. And that's why the engagement that is there between ourselves, National Treasury, and our relevant committee, which is the Education Committee of Parliament, is currently ongoing to ensure that we don't disadvantage any child as we continue. Chair, on the angering of NACONEC, I would not want to anticipate a debate of the House. We have already submitted a bill, and the bill has made certain recommendations. It is the prerogative of this House to make that decision. And therefore, I would not want to anticipate a debate, but we have already given our recommendations.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, you cannot anticipate debate. Debate is anticipated by members of Parliament. Chair, a very specific question. P.S. You have told us that NACONEC is the implementing agency of the school feeding program. The simple question is this: under the bill that you presented before Parliament, have you provided a provision to make NACONEC a corporate entity? Have you given NACONEC powers, legal powers, so that they can fully implement and discharge their functions? Because, you know, PS, the reason why the budget of NACONEC has been interfered with is because it has been, it is under basic education, and therefore they don't have powers or a specific mandate to propose their budgets, because it is not, to propose and defend their budget because it is not a legal entity and should be envisaged by the law.
Chair, I would want to say that in the draft bill that is still undergoing all the processes that it's supposed to undergo, including public participation, we have adequately provided for proper angering of NACONEC and even reviewed. You'll even see once it comes to the House, it may not necessarily be now called NACONEC, because we would want to widen the scope of what it is doing so that it is no longer looking like it's focused on nomadic communities. And so
exactly, that is the question I was going to ask, because you are aware of the situation in Budalang constituency and parts of Nyano, where schools have been flooded since 2019. People are living in camps and so on. And they have not been getting this support till today, because possibly of this NACONEC, which is concentrating in those other areas, and they cannot support these other areas. So if you are going to improve on this NACONEC so that other areas are included, then that is the right thing to do.
So that is why I was saying, Chair, without being preemptive, we have adequately reviewed the way that NACONEC should look in the future. Because, you know, there are so many nomads. You know, I'm told there are nomads in Oma Bay who follow fish. So we would want to have it in a way that it is properly covering, because, you know, even when we are dealing with informal settlements, as is today, they support informal settlements. So when the bill comes to the House, you'll see that we have widened the scope. We have even relooked in the way that we should even be naming the institution, so that its scope is widened and it covers more parts of our country.
Chair. Currently, and I think the CEO of NACONEC is here, sitting next to you. Now, currently, it's a semi-autonomous government agency, correct? Is it currently? So for a conference purpose of this committee, what are you proposing? You want to make it an autonomous agency, or what are you proposing the bill? Without, of course, anticipating debate, as you say, for our comfort here. And specifically, we come from an area that is not an arid area, but there are too many informal settlements and children require support.
In the bill, the institution will be well anchored in law to be able to carry its functions. That's what I would say. So, Chair,
Still continuing. It will continue.
on Kajiado, yes, I know in this particular term there may have been a delay because of exchequer issues, but I can assure you that already the disbursements are ongoing so that we don't disadvantage our children. So that one I can give you our commitment. And again, okay, so I will give the CEO at some point to firm up a few issues. We have said on the universal school feeding, as government, we have given ourselves this financial year to cover up to 4 million children. And that is why we are engaging with National Treasury so that we can be able to continuously move towards that particular target. The other thing, Chair, is that we would want to do this as early as yesterday. And the good thing with our Constitution 2010 is that it took it away from the executive to Parliament to appropriate. If you adequately appropriated to this program, we shall be able to cover the whole country. On this policy that we are having is an updated policy of what we have been calling nutrition and school meals policy. So it is an upgrade of a policy that has been there, which was capturing school health, nutrition, and school feeding. But now we are now focusing out of the resolutions of the House to have a more targeted policy that is focusing on schools meals program. So it is not that we've been running without a policy, it is only that we've been running a policy that was covering a wider aspect, but we now want to focus it on the school meals. And within the school meals policy, then it will capture areas on nutrition, it will capture areas on health, it will capture areas in which we go into partnership, so it will be widening the scope. Finally, Chair, before I give the CEO, on how we make up our minds on cash transfer and food in kind. We target 11 counties, mainly the real tri-counties, Wajir, Mandera, Isiolo. The ones, even if we were to give them cash, food will be so expensive because it's not available. We give cash transfer to those regions where communities may be able to grow food. You know, if you go to Kajiado, there will be certain food that they can grow and which they can buy from the communities. But if you go to Wajir, it may be very difficult and that they will end up buying food which is imported and taken to those regions. So for them to benefit from economies and to benefit from a more elaborate way of procuring, to benefit from quality and making sure that we don't expose to aflatoxin and all the other things, then that is why in those dry areas where they may not be having fresh produced food, then we take it up as government to procure and take food to them. So that is why we have both the cash transfer and on Taitimo. I know this has been a very sensitive thing to Meru, and I can assure you already there is a team of World Food Program, ourselves, checking why for sure. Isiolo and Meru is that overlap, and that we are using just a line where Empu, Meru and Isiolo, yet the environments are just the same. So this one I can assure you by the time we feed children in the next term, we shall have sorted out some of those issues that is affecting that region. Chair, if you allow just a minute or two for the CEO to elaborate on one or two things.
CEO.
Thank you very much, Madam PS, for that elaborate response. Chairman, through you, there's a component that was mentioned that was not probably covered, which is resource mobilization. As aptly mentioned by the PS, it may not be possible for Kenya as a country to provide budget for 10 million children at one go. If we tell ourselves possibly those dreams, it may not be very easy. But we have come up with a strategy to ensure that we're able to cover 10 million children with an interim figure of 4 million by the end of this year, as we progress every year to do it. How? As we mobilize more money and resources to feed the children, there's always the implication on the environment. Even donors, as you speak today, there are those who are willing to come on board and support school feeding at any one level. But the first question they will ask is, what is your source of energy? What is your source of cooking system? If it is firewood, you know these days the implication of climate change. So many donors are worried about picking up the agenda very quickly. So what we have now done is that we have come up with a clean cooking strategy. We want to do mass transition of moving from using biomass to clean cooking using steam, which have already piloted in 6 secondary schools, and the one major primary school is now is ongoing in Eldoret, such that with this clean cooking, we'll be able now to tap into the untapped market of carbon finance. So we've done the research, and I can assure you that by actually this afternoon today, a cabinet memo from the Minister of Education is going to CS Treasury for him to submit one of our key proposals which have been accepted by our partners in the OPEC Fund, that will be supporting 22 centralized kitchens in the urban informal settlements in Kenya, including Kakamega. What we have now done is that out of the 10 million children, we have published them into 2 sets. 5.5 million children that are found in the urban informal settlements, that is the main cities of Nairobi, Kisumu, or even including all the big towns like Muranga, Nyeri, Kakamega, Busia, Bungoma. 5.5 million children have been mapped out, and 4.5 million children in the rural decentralized areas like the arid and the semi-arid, and also a few peri-urban settlements in maybe remote areas within the major, as like for example now Isiolo may have, or a town like Meru may have, apart from the centralized catchments, we have a very few pockets of schools very far from the city. So that will now be able to give us, so we have now done that calculation. We are having now the support of one of our partners to give us 22 kitchens. Already 2 of the pilots are already ongoing, they have been mapped out. We have 1 kitchen happening in Eldoret, and we will be having 1 in Nakuru, and another one in Kisumu, supported by the World Bank. That will be taking care, centralized kitchens will take care of 30,000 learners. And once the facility that we put in place will not be ordinary kitchens, but they will be carbon asset infrastructure that will be used now in tapping into the carbon finance. Other strategies we are now looking at, Mr. Chairman, to raise fund is also to negotiate with the Kenya Revenue Authority or KRA on sin tax. Not the existing excise tax that is known, but if you will realize that Kenya imports a lot of junk food in this country. And this junk food is very unhealthy for our children and the society, including the ones which are very sugary. So if you can have a kind of a tax on this particular products, then we can be able to raise and then have that money channeled specifically to school feeding. Other areas we are now looking at also is a policy shift, where we are going to encourage also parents to contribute to the school feeding program. Because I know parents are willing, but because of the lack and absence of a policy, there's a lot of limitations. So parents can be able, for example, 5 shillings per child per day can be one of the key policy shifts that we can be having in this particular policy, and see to it that we're now able to mobilize more resources. And another final one, which was actually mentioned aptly by our Member of Parliament, is a proposal for 2.5% of the national revenue to be dedicated to school feeding program. That is what is going to happen to appear. 2.5% of our national revenue can be considered for. That's now an issue that we'll submit to Parliament, and we're very sure that we'll be able to get your favors on the same, so that we can have a clear strategy on how we intend to feed our 10 million children as we go on. On the short-term measures that you have actually mentioned, is that we're actually progressing. We're mobilizing more resources through the carbon finance. As you are aware, His Excellency the President has moved around globally to actually question the financial architecture, particularly the one rotating around Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement, where accessing climate finance has been a big challenge for the countries in the global south. And because of the pressure His Excellency has done, most of, particularly in COP28, that was the last that happened in Dubai, there is a lot of now relaxing of muscles by entities involved in climate change, in the climate atmosphere, where we are now likely to access funding very soon regarding climate money. Legal status has already been mentioned. The bill is coming. NACONEC has now been well structured, and you'll be able to see it as we come. Regarding NAROC, I mean, Ezekiel of the school feeding, as the PS has actually mentioned, there were two reasons why there was a delay. Number one, we've had a lot of complaints from members of parliament regarding how do you target these schools and you have left out these schools. When we look back at the history, because NACONEC took over the meal program from the ministry, we realized that it was based maybe at the time because of the emerging issues. So what we did was that we brought a team on board led by WFP so that it becomes independent from NACONEC and the ministry to lead what we call retargeting of schools in the semi-arid areas where the cash transfer goes. And the idea of the cash transfer is to make sure that communities go back to agriculture, they grow, and we provide the money for them. So that delay has been there. We have now got the final report of the retargeting, which is already available. In fact, some of the schools which used to get money now may not be getting. And there are a few schools that were not getting before are likely to come on board. So that was a delay. And within the next 4 or 5 days, we'll be able to disburse the monies to the schools. My PS has already mentioned that we are not running without a legal document. Policy documents have been already in place. What was done is that this one is just updating, taking into consideration the new emerging trends within the education sector. So with those very many remarks, and maybe finally, on the cash transfer, there's now a new remodel strategy that we are now doing. We want to move away also from the cash transfer. We are moving what we call the aggregator model, where we want to basically implement the bottom-up economics and transform agenda. We have farmers will come together, grow food, we identify one aggregator, and then that aggregator now collects all the food required, and we pay the aggregator now who is going to pay in turn. Because the current cash transfer has a lot of weaknesses, because the schools are far apart, and the money is too small. So the economies of scale advantage may not be there. So we're actually piloting the aggregator model in Meru, Embu, and Tharaka-Nithi before the close of this financial year. And we'll be happy to invite quite a number of, and see whether we can be able to do just a pilot to see how the remodeling can work, the aggregator model. And then the schools now in Kajiado will now mobilize the farmers with the help of WFP, find an aggregator, grow the context and food that is available there, and then the aggregator now will be able to mobilize the food we buy from him and distribute to all the schools. That will help us now give schools fresh food, and it will also give us a guarantee that there's wide reach of the food itself to all the schools. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much, and that's why I still continue to assure you as members of this House that we need to anchor NACONEC adequately, properly, so that now they can be able to focus on issues school feeding and release the ministry to focus on issues of curriculum delivery and all that which is there. Thank you, Chair.
What appears Article 43 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides that every person has the right to health, education, food of acceptable quality, and decent livelihoods. Further, Article 53 states that every child has the right to free and compulsory basic education and to basic nutrition, shelter, and health care. That is the Constitution. And indeed, in your report as a ministry in 2018, we just discovered that over 850 children dropped out of education because of feeding program. And when you look around, I've told you from 2018, even the constituencies I'm talking about, TSC has identified them as a hardship area. And teachers there are earning hardship allowance. May you tell us who identifies ASAL, these semi-arid and ASAL areas? And they have not been able to identify Nyando and Budaland, where people stay in camps. Houses are collapsed by floods every year. And from 2019, they have been staying like that. You have seen schools in water. They have no food, their crops are washed away. Why they have not identified those places? So who identifies these places? Yes, Jardesa.
Thank you. I'm happy that Meru and Tusia and the other areas want to be in hardship areas and in the ASAL areas. You look like you are happy to be in ASAL, and I'm happy that you are wishing to be in our shoes. But it's not a very comfortable shoe, and I wish...
Point of order, Chair. You have heard from the yes due to climatical advancements. So it's not a wish. I believe the member is castigating.
No.
We are not praying.
Isiolo town.
Of climate.
Isiolo town is not Isiolo County. And because Isiolo town looks like it's proximity to Meru, and it doesn't mean that the rest of Isiolo County...
First of all, we withdraw that members are wishing.
I think, Honorable Member Jardesa, you need to withdraw that because we have
for
different...
the purpose of continuity, let's withdraw that one. So, but the truth of the matter is that those areas that is considered as ASAL is not having the same environment like what you guys are having. But now, I don't know where to start my issues. But I want you to assure us there are 2.6 million children per Tumu. There are 2.6 million children today under school feeding program in the ASAL and semi-arid and arid areas. And other, whatever, getting 1.96 billion shillings for that purpose. I'm just hoping that the budget cut, because we are hoping that increase, and there's a budget cut, that budget cut does not affect our children in the arid and semi-arid areas. Because you are trying to spread the same thing, you may want to spread that money to other areas. You want to include more children, but at the end of the day, I hope we shall not, our children from the arid and semi-arid, as I said, I'm from Moyale, Marsabit County, we are not going to be disadvantaged. That's, I want that assurance. Number two, there are certain things that people in Nairobi may not know. And unfortunately, the teachers who are receiving that food that you're supplying are not under the Ministry of Education, they are under the TSC. Your people cannot discipline a teacher. Now, do you have any mechanism in place to ensure that the food that you have supplied to, say, Wajir County will actually reach the children in Wajir and not be sold by the education officers and the teachers who are supposed to be responsible for that food stuff? Why am I saying this? At times, the food is delivered to the county headquarters or the district headquarters. It's supposed to be transported from that area to another 200-300 kilometers away. And at times, because there's no means of transport, or the money that you're giving for transport comes later, these people may sell some of this food to acquire transport and deliver the food to the places. And one appears, I come from, Marsabit County is one of the counties that has a proper true desert. Asal. Not Asal, but arid lands, the desert. You may deliver the food, but do we have the water to cook? Yes, the food is there, you have delivered, it has reached the school, but there's no water. And at some point, you had an idea of Water for Schools program. For the last 2 years I was in Parliament, I have not seen any borehole which is sunk by the Ministry of Water, by the Ministry of Education, or even water in assisting or alleviating the water shortage in schools. So that if you look at the problems that people have, I will say for ease of the word, the northern Kenya. And that does not exclude Kajiado and the other arid areas, semi-arid areas. But the problems we have is actually much wider than what is on the common table. If Budalang is complaining about shortage of water, no, excess water, flood, for me, the rain which has rained has flooded and gone, flash flood, and it is gone, and today it's dry. So I want you to consider the fact that the 10 counties that you said are hard to reach, they're actually hard to reach. That's why you need to take the food to them. Their problems are more than what is met on the surface. And then...
Honorable Member, I hope you are not moving another motion.
No, no, no.
So also ask you a question and so that other people can...
Are those not questions? No. So, finally, I was a bit surprised that you are thinking of shelving the law as it is today because you are anticipating the presidential working team to come up with some policy statement of all laws. I hope that's not what you are saying. So whatever is in place should continue as you wait for modifications or alterations of the existing law as recommended by the presidential working team. Thank you. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Jajasa is a doctor. Chair, first of all, allow me to thank the Honorable Elsie for moving this very important motion. Chair, the issue at hand here today is of great importance. A report by WFP shows that the development of a child is determined by nutrition. And first of all, the first 1,000 days are very important to a child. This report goes ahead to explain that the development of a child, if denied proper nutrition, will also be detrimental in the long run to the development of this child to the country. So what we are talking here about is very critical for the development of our country. So I take a lot of concern and issue when the CEO says that we are not able to feed 10 million children as a country. I mean, we are a country who could afford a $3.6 billion SDR. Can't we feed our children? Why are our priorities as a country? You know? Having said that, allow me, Chair, to be the advocate's devil and ask a question. Why do we need an Nakonek? Why can't we distribute this money through NGCDF? And the reason why I'm saying this, the reason why Kenyans took the option of devolution is so that people can make decisions on the ground that they know are best suited for them, instead of someone fumbling in Nairobi or elsewhere in the country trying to determine a very remote school in Kajiado Central, whether it's the one that needs food as opposed to another one. And this brings the question of what is the criteria of you determining? And I know this question has come up severally, but what criteria are you using to determine? I have more than 130 primary schools in Kajiado Central. What is the criteria that you're using to determine school A as opposed to school B? Secondly, how much are we talking about? What are you giving per child in these schools? Chair, the reason why I'm asking this, I've recently come up with a very simple and cost-effective program in partnership with other people called Kilimo Shuleni, where schools are growing their own food. And this, Chair, is the most simple and cheapest solution to feed our children. And it is where we want to be as a country. Why? One, these children in school growing their own food or seeing their own food being grown will come out of schools with skills that they can feed themselves and feed the country. As opposed to children who, again, I take issue with the CEO Nakonek saying there are places in this country where you can't grow food. I don't believe that is true. There is nowhere that you cannot grow food in this country. Not a single place. So, Chair, I want members to really think about the reason why we are not distributing this money through NGCDF. Let's just take 3 billion, for example, and break it down. 3 billion, if were to distribute it to 290 constituencies, would have every constituency have 10.5 million shillings. That a member of parliament would be able to determine which are the schools that are in dire situation. A member of parliament can be able to determine whether to have these schools grow food for themselves with that money, as opposed to what is happening in the country that has just been demonstrated by Honorable Jaldesa, where food is provided to some schools and transport cost takes probably a portion of this food. We are taking a very costly route to feed our children. And we're also taking a route that is not sustainable in the future. I would rather, when this bill comes to Parliament, we have NACONECT to be the policy maker of food in schools, but allow the spirit of devolution to continue being entrenched. Let members of Parliament determine which of their schools are more needful. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. The motion before you, is not talking about 2030. And the Parliament does not pass or debate in vain. The motion before you is that all basic education schools going children are supposed to be fed. That's the motion before you. How you are going to do it? you know what you are supposed to do. Yet, you have just been told by I've just read for you the laws here, that it is, you implement it within minimum time. Please tell us how fast you are going to implement this motion so that all schools, and I've read to you the law, past 2010, that you implement this motion in its entirety, because it was passed in its entirety. Because we are soon again going to call you here that we want this motion to be implemented. So when we are talking about 2030, we get confused. We want it yesterday. It was passed 2022, today is 2024. What plans do you have? Even those ones who are trying to deduct the money for school feeding program, they don't know what they're doing because the motion must be implemented. What plans do you have to implement this motion in its entirety? Yes, Cynthia, Honorable Cynthia.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to appreciate Honorable Elsie for such a thoughtful motion. Honorable Chair, when the PS and the CEO was speaking, I was a bit confused until I had to consult. Are we talking about selective feeding program, or we are talking about the motion that says school feeding program for every school-going kid? And I think we should read from the same page, Chair, that the motion that we're dealing with, like you have put, is about feeding each and every child that goes to school, at least the basic schooling. Honorable Chair, I also want to state that you don't need to come from arid and semi-arid area. You don't need to come from an informal settlement for you to be in need of food to stay in school. Honorable Chair, I am a neighbor to Elsie, and me and Elsie, the originator of the motion, do not come from an asshole or whatever, or an informal settlement. We come from a properly constituted and blessed county. But Chair, we have issues and problems. A school in Aldai constituency, on a PS called Pemja Primary School, has a serious population, but when you go there, kids are released home at 11:10. Those in PP1, PP2, grade 1, all the way to grade 4, because they faint. Because one, the terrain to get to school and home, it's rocky. In fact, you carry everything on your back when you're going to that school. They go home that early because they have to go home and find food. And when they go home, Chair, most of the time, what they do is watch rocks. There's no food to eat. There's only rocks to watch, so that you scream early before they fall on your house, so that you can be able to run away. So, Chair, you don't need to be from an arid and semi-arid place or an informal settlement to need food. There are issues and problems everywhere. It doesn't matter how blessed or not blessed you are. There are issues, and we are asking for a feeding program for every school-going child. Chair, we have spoken, and the PS and the CEO have spoken about budgeting. Honorable Chair, I want to join Honorable Kanchori. You know, I have tried doing my calculations here of how many the billions that we're saying that have been appropriated for those kids that we have in school currently. And I'm trying to do 1.9B divided by what? 2.6 million children. So I get 730, and I'm wondering, what is this? Is it Kenya shillings? Is it meals? What is it exactly? And Honorable Chair, we cannot continue, and the ministry cannot continue telling us we want or we need, we could not get budgetary allocations. You know, I need to get convinced. I need to look at what you're saying. I need to see the data that you're showing me. That, look here, we have 100 and maybe 50,000 schools in this country with an average of how many kids? Like 240 per school average. And all these kids per head can consume 0. whatever or 100 grams of beans, 100 grams of maize, 100 grams of vegetables, skuma wiki, in a day. And we intend to feed them for 5 days, times 30 days, times 12 months, times, you know, give us a visual impression that is convincing to me. So that when I go to the budgeting making process as a member of parliament, I'm able to relate the problems that are in Kibongwa, in Tindred, the problems that are in Chikapchebose, in Moso constituency, and in Nandi Hills. I can relate with the budget that we're putting down. So, Honorable Chair, I do not appreciate the ministry coming here and saying we have identification. How are you able to decide which county has a problem and which county doesn't have a problem? And that's why I sort of want to agree with decentralization in the spirit of devolution, that we decentralize to the people who wear the shoe. Because they're going to see you are in Nairobi, you don't know where PMJ is. Of course, you have an officer. That is the neighbor, me and Elsie share the place. That is the border. You don't know where it is. You need someone on the ground who is the wearer of the shoe, who shows up in a primary school like I show up in Siret and be asked, Mheshimiwa, can you leave us a few sacks of some money to buy a few sacks of maize? These kids cannot go home and they are doing exams. We need that kind of hands-on approach. We need to speak to the issues of growing food. I ever went to a school in my place and they said, can we get money for some packets of maize and some fertilizer because we need to grow our food. We cannot afford to buy them. So there are places who can grow food. They have serious lands around there and they do not have the capacity to cultivate. Can we be able to be hands-on people so that we can get a proper solution for this? As a mother and as a woman who actually feels the pain of a hungry child, I must say that this thing has to be accorded the seriousness it deserves. And when appears, you have been in this ministry long enough to know what is working and what is not working. Kindly pay attention on behalf of Kenya Kwanza government that every child in this country can get food in school. And forget about money. Money can be changed in the budget making process in a snap of a finger. If you give us a roadmap of what you want to achieve, you will get money. But if you keep saying budgetary allocation, we don't know what you're using, what you got, or what you wanted to use, what you didn't get, of course you will continue saying there's no money. Bring tangible and reasonable documentations on the table, and you will surely get the money. Chairman, thank you for that. And the sourcing of food. I work with a very progressive member of parliament in Aldai. That member of parliament has done a very good job in the feeding program in schools. She was able to do away with the cash transfer, of course, from the constituency level, and be able to attach that to the amount of school fees that is paid in day schools. That she calculated the exact consumption per child for the number of days that they go to school, and was able to slash a very good amount of money and keep children in school, the high school going one. I think we should be able to talk to these honorable members of parliament. They have done a good job in ensuring that those kids in secondary school are feeding. We must extend it to the primary section so that we can keep our children in school. Otherwise, we are preparing for a disaster in the future. Thank you, Chair.
In a nutshell, Bwana PS, you are breaking the law. I've read to you the law. That Article 53 is that every child has the right to free and compulsory basic education and to basic nutrition. You are breaking the law because you are not feeding those children. You are making them to drop out of school. Yet it's their right to be in school and get that education. How fast are you going to implement this motion in its entirety? Don't talk about 2030. 2030, you know how many will have dropped out?
Before the PS response. In the Auditor General's report 2023, which I believe you have had a look at in analyzing this particular program, the Auditor General cited several irregularities in this particular operation of this program. And specifically the food, delivery of food and the cash transfers. Says 45%, only 45% of the targeted groups got food. When it came to cash transfers, only 25%. And he highlighted several other things to make the program maybe efficient. he indicated that there was insufficient food. Allocation was not responsive to the local needs. He highlighted that there is disparity of data in terms of those ones who are supposed to be beneficiaries and those ones who had benefited. He noted delays in deliveries of the food, delays in this, but many other irregularities that were noted out by the Auditor General in his report, in the performance report. In order to streamline this program, and looking at what our colleagues have also said, is it not high time that this program was actually devolved back to the constituencies? Because from the Auditor General's report, you are having a lot of challenges in implementing this particular report. And if we leave you implementing it, maybe we might still keep on having, budget cuts. Because once it's figured that this program is not being run in a proper manner, you will still suffer budget cuts. Is it not high time that we now be able to devolve this thing to the constituencies and back to the people? Because one of the key changes, game changers in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was to send it back to the local roots. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Elsie.
Thank you. Reading the mood of the House. Bwana PS, I think we want to live here when NACONEC has been broken. Because NACONEC is not a representative of the whole country. NACONEC is discriminative, it is punitive. Listening to all the members of parliament, food program should be for the whole country. So this one does not represent us. So we are just asking you to break it and form another body which represents everybody. And secondly, if you look at the Kenya School Meals Policy, I've been looking at it. I've been looking at the references and the technical team. I think you have had a lot of good ideas from the members of parliament. So I think before this policy comes out, it is important to have a sample of members of parliament to put in their input in this meals policy at this level. Call a retreat, call some members of parliament so that we can add an input. Thank you.
Members, let's allow them to take those questions. There are too many, then we can take another round. Please.
Chairman, these are full of questions.
Honorable
Chair, now, could we get maybe the challenges that is faced by NACONEC? Because this is they have been implementing this program since time immemorial. Now, could you tell us, the head of NACONEC, the CEO, through their peers, whether you have representatives in the constituencies that are benefiting from this program, whether you have representatives, and two, the specific challenges that you face as NACONEC in implementing this particular program, and whether those challenges can be addressed through, whether they have been addressed in this policy, and whether they can be further addressed by a substantive legislation.
Yes, you can again answer, then we can.
Thank you, Chair. I will pick a few of the questions and then the CEO will be able to deal with the others. Chair, one thing I would want to say is that, yes, the essence, the invitation here was to engage on the essence of the motion, which was that we develop a policy which will be able to guide the school feeding program. That's why we are here. And if we have already given a draft policy, we have also said that there are bills that are coming to the House. There is a sessional paper that is also coming to the House. All these are how to guide so many other things that we do in the education sector, but we have a draft policy that is focusing on school meals. And this policy is what will guide all of us, so that we are not really here on the implementation, but on the guidance.
The motion is here. This House therefore resolves that the Ministry of Education, through the relevant state department, immediately developed a school feeding policy to cover basic education pupils and sustain the program. What's the program? School feeding.
Thank you, Chair. And that's why I'm saying today we have come to demonstrate that we are working towards developing a school feeding program that will be able now to take all the views, and I really like what Honorable Memusi is saying, and that this policy will come for public participation, the law will come to Parliament, and what we shall have recommended through the Presidential Working Party and the Ministry of Education will have an opportunity to be improved by Parliament and by the public through public participation, so that at the end of the day, we shall be able to achieve a system that will be able to ensure that, one, we retain our children in school, two, is that other than retaining them, is that we shall give them food that is nutritious enough to support them on their development, and more so the mental development. As mentioned by the Member of Parliament, the first years of the child, if not properly taken care of in terms of mental development, it can retard that child forever. And therefore, we are here today in pursuance of that particular motion that said there is need for us to develop a policy that will make sure that this program is and that is exactly why this program is there, Chair. And NACONEC has been running this program. Now, this is the second year that they are doing it.
Yes, I'm still not agreeing with you. This is a committee of implementation. We already passed the motion that you are supposed to implement. If you have to be specific even with the times. If we will continue waiting for, I don't know what, working through, presidential working what, when will we finish this?
Chair, not with interjecting, but if you see the report, the response that I gave, in the last paragraph, number 14, I did say that the revised draft policy document will be presented to the Cabinet for approval, after which it will be formally published and adopted. The Ministry targets to have the policy in place by September 2024. The policy.
But Chair,
Yes.
But this school feeding program seems like a program that has been running. Why do we now need to go back and do public participation and policy and all when it's already been running? It's just a matter of funding and ready to go. You even already have the, implementing it, you're already running it, you're already doing the cash disbursement. I mean, why now taking back to public participation? It seems like public participation is like starting a whole new thing. I mean, why now? Why the delay?
Chairman. The wheel is there, we're not fighting the wheel.
Yeah. We are not fighting the wheel. Yes,
You know, in 1979, when the late President Moi took over, in 78 and 79, introduced the school meal, where most of these people are benefited.
I benefited.
I did not. I was there, not there. But you see, that was a school feeding program.
I benefited.
That was a school feeding program. And it was all over the country. And probably from there, there's something called Japan, Tokyo, Kentendri or something, which also came in and assisted the government. I think what these people are saying, we have a will to widen the scope without diluting. Yeah? I think that's what we need to hear. If 1979 we had that school feeding program all over the country, every child anywhere in this country was getting milk. Today, why should it be so difficult?
Chair, I think we are cycling around the same issue. One, Chair, the motion was for the ministry to develop a policy. Chair, they have developed. Chair, what we are following up on is
by when should they conclude this policy? And then time is...
Honorable members, it's not just policy. It's policy on food feeding program,
which is contained.
Yeah, which is contained there. So when are they? Those are the questions.
Yes, and Chair, they have said one very, very critical thing. That they have suffered a budget cut up to 3 billion shillings. So all these questions we are asking, just simply being nasty. We want to now be well armed so that as we go to the House, we want to say there are proper programs that are being put present by the ministry so that we can be able to push for more money towards the school feeding program.
I think members...
That's why we are asking all these questions.
Members, we do it like this. I think we do it like this. Please, we need you to go back. Get the number of schools and the number of pupils in schools and students in JSS. Come back to this committee, having calculated how much it will cost a child to have lunch in school. Then we will be able to call treasury after you have come here. Because this motion must be implemented and as soon as possible. So don't make it difficult for us to implement this program. You are making it very difficult. So we'll send you back. Go calculate, come back to this committee. We are giving you 2 weeks to come back to this committee, telling us how much it will cost the country to feed this, because it's in the law. You are supposed to feed them. You have been there longer, my brother. You've been in that ministry, you understand it very well. Nobody understands this ministry than you, that ministry. And you are very efficient, by the way. If no, I can tell you are very efficient. Among the peers that have been there, we appreciate you. So just go back, do the calculation, come back to this committee.
Chair, allow me to interject before you make a conclusive decision. I am sure this team has the figures. They know how much it costs to feed a child. I'm sure you know that. So, and I'm sure you know a number of learners in our schools. The issue that this committee wants, because PS, what you have said is what is in your response, that the ministry targets to have the policy in place by September 2024. But you see, this statement does not give the answer that these members are looking for. You're going to have a policy by this time. So we are asking you as the implementation committee. One, you know how much it costs. Give us that figure. That's number one. Number two, when will this program run? So that this committee will also call Treasury and say, for the ministry or for NACONEC to run this feeding program, they need this amount of money. And you must provide. Because members, let's be fair, they cannot give themselves money.
Yes.
They have to be financed.
Yeah. That's why we have said we'll call it the treasury.
So give us the numbers that you need.
Yeah.
Give us the time that you will take. If you're given this money today, how long will you take to feed the 10 million children of this country? That's what we need to know.
And it is not just about the policy. What they are saying, the policy to cover basic education pupils and sustain the program in order to ensure that children are maintained in school for effective learning and to improve their well-being. So it's not just a policy that you have developed a policy, it remains like that. That's why we're asking you, give us the figures. The next person we are supposed to be calling is the treasurer. Yeah. We don't pass motions in vain.
And Chair, time is of the essence. Yes. Because you see, we are going through a budget cycle now. Yes. The budget is going to be read on Thursday. Yeah. If we get it in September 2024, you'll get it after the horse has bolted. Yeah. So we want to assist the ministry.
And it sounds like, Chair, it sounds like also this program to run
does not necessarily have to wait for this policy to be passed in September to continue. There seems like it will be, the policy has been there. You just need modification to it to improve it. Yeah. But the program should be rolling. Children should be receiving food in schools now, not in September. I mean, we don't know what is holding, because right now the program should be fully running. I'm also interested to know a little bit about the development partners, whether they are contributing to this program, whether